Hi, I'm Behnam Kakavand and I work for Evolution.
Behnam, it's really great to have you here on the Inside the Videoverse podcast. Today, we're going to talk about is your stream low latency or ultra low latency? Real time video communications, interactive video is absolutely coming. And it's really exciting. There's a lot of great applications for entertainment, for play, for work, for education. So, why don't we start with you telling us what is the difference between, as you see it, between low latency and ultra low latency? Are they one
Mhm.
and the same?
Well, actually, first we have to discuss what is latency. When we are talking about the latency, what do we mean? And in the video streaming industry, that means that what happens in front of the camera or anything that generates the video, and how long will it take for the user to see that action, that what's happened there. And we are basically giving that explanation as the latency. When we are talking about the latency and low latency and ultra low latency, it's usually, yes, of course, it's a buzzword these days, and everybody has a low latency solutions. Not a bad thing. Actually, it's a very good thing. But the difference is it's actually very, very dependent on who are you talking with. And usually, but conventional wisdom is that anything lower than 5 seconds of latency, meaning that whatever happens in front of the camera, if the user sees it in less than 5 seconds, usually between 2 seconds to 5 seconds, we are calling it low latency. That's glass to glass latency. And if it is lower than 1 or 2 seconds, again, depends on who you're asking, it is called ultra low latency. For us, for example, below 2 seconds, we are in evolution consider it the ultra low latency. And it is an important topic for sure.
Yeah. What are because there's some technology differences.
True.
Maybe we should touch on that also to set the
Mhm.
stage here as we talk about this. So, what are the technologies for low latency versus an ultra low latency type solution?
Sure.
Can you stream, for example, does HLS work at 1 second, 2 seconds?
Well, absolutely not, actually. I mean, the regular HLS, no luck with that. I mean, with the regular HLS, if you tune everything down and make basically optimize everything from the cameras all the way to your player and distribution and everything in between, you will get something around 10, 15 seconds, maybe nine, at most like 7, 6 seconds. But you have to basically sacrifice so many stuff. There are alternative solutions for you to get below 5 seconds, namely the Apple's low latency HLS. There are other not so standard non-Apple version of the HLS. Of course, they are calling it still HLS, like LHLS or others. And there is LL dash, low latency dash as well. All of these are HTTP based solutions. And I highly recommend to watch the excellent talk by Will Law at the DMOX, he's talking about all of the different solutions that provided these facilitate these low latency streaming. And if you want to go anything lower than that, there's absolutely no luck with the HTTP based solutions. And even on the lower end of the low latency streaming, the HTTPs are going to create some issues.
Yeah.
Namely, for example, measuring the bandwidth, I mean, with very small segment sizes, it is quite troublesome when you're trying to measure the bandwidth, which you are going to need to provide adaptive bitrate and adaptive playback. It is becoming pretty much hard. It's a hard problem. But if you want to go anything lower than that, currently the best solution is the WebRTC. And it is the thing
WebRTC.
that we are using for interactive video, for web conferencing, and stuff like that for cloud gaming. Basically, WebRTC can provide latencies below 500 milliseconds, half a second, and it is the standard solution right now for ultra low latency. But there's a big gap between basically that 2-3 seconds and these half second. which is not a standard latency. No standard solution basically facilitates that. One instance is one example is our solution. We
Yeah.
don't need like 500 millisecond. Of course, if we can get it, we will be happy.
Sure.
But above 3 seconds is too much for us. And this gap is an empty gap, and nobody
Mm.
facilitates that. So we had to do our own thing.
Yeah.
So then we can talk about that further.
Yeah. Can you explain what the use cases are for the various services that you operate?
Sure. Well, first, let's talk about the use cases of the low latency. Why do we need low latency? It may sound obvious to the video people, but let's discuss on that. I mean, the thing is that whenever there's time sensitivity involved with the content, and you have to deliver it as fast as possible, then latency becomes a major factor, something major thing that you have to fight with in order to get. For example, give you an example. If you're watching a live sports game
Hmm.
and you're watching it on your mobile phone over a streaming service, and your neighbor is watching it on their TV, broadcast TV,
That's
and we
right.
know that for the broadcast TV, it has been said that anything between 5, 6, 7 seconds, it's a standard
Hmm.
latency. If you suddenly hear them through the walls that your favorite team scored a goal, then
Yeah,
it ruins your experience. The completely the excitement of the live game is out of
that's
the
right.
is
It's gone.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to be on at least on par with the broadcast. And if you are
Hmm.
going, there are, in case of the live sports, 5 seconds, 4 seconds is good. But if
Hmm.
we are talking about the interactive experiences,
Hmm.
anything like the calls or the games or gamblings or the auctions,
Hmm.
these are also time sensitive and requires an interaction between the two sides of the stream. Uh, Someone who is in front of the camera and the user who is watching it.
Yeah.
And in these cases, the amount of latencies become even more, so to say, critical. And you
Yeah.
have to, if you're just, if two people are talking to each other, like us right now,
Hmm.
if you have to wait for like even 5 seconds, 4 seconds for me to reply, and that
Yeah.
just ruins the experience again. So you
Yeah.
need as much as low you can go with the latency. In our
Got it.
case, at the Evolution, our business is basically providing the live casino. And
Hmm.
in live casino, there is a big element of interaction between the game presenters and the game itself, and what happens in the studio at the table,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
players who are basically the users who are playing that game.
Hmm.
So if there is a huge gap between what is asked of the users by the game presenter and
Hmm.
the action that is required by the player,
Hmm.
then it doesn't feel like a real game, something that people
Yeah.
are actually experiencing in reality. And our goal is to recreate that
Yeah, that's
realistic
right.
experience. So latency becomes a major thing that we have to overcome.
Interesting. There's I like to call it the low latency triangle, trade off, which is true regardless of a latency discussion or not. But in video encoding, as we all know, you can have quality, you can have reliability, you can have scale. And of course, we can parse that with other factors, but at least for this discussion, I think those are most relevant. Certainly in your business, reliability is critical. Scale, you need to be able to support a lot of potentially simultaneous viewers, or, there's different applications there. Talk to us about how you think about those trade-offs, and if you can, maybe share where you have chosen to make some trade-offs, why, and then where you haven't. When we think about quality and reliability of service, and then just the ability to scale.
In case of the reliability and the scale, what we have done, we had to build everything ourselves to be able to. service our videos or our games in that very narrow gap of between 2 3 seconds and 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
And now we get to the third one, the quality. This is the part that we are trying our best to get as much as we can. But that's the hardest part, to be honest with you, because of the time. And
Mm-hmm.
one way to achieve, if you, I believe that most of our listeners are very familiar with this topic, but if you want to get a good quality, you must, again, there is the same triangle there
That's
of the
right.
resources, of the
That's right.
time, and the bit rate and the quality and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, over there, because of the nature of our content, we have to sacrifice the time. So we have to compress our videos as fast as we can. So we
Yeah.
have to sacrifice the quality, because if we are going to sacrifice the bitrate part of it, since our videos are our source of income, if they are
Mm-hmm.
too huge, I mean the volume wise, if they are the bit rates are too high, we cannot deliver it to many more people,
Mm-hmm.
and that will cut our benefits.
Are you using software or hardware encoders or a mix? And describe as much as you're able
Sure,
to. What does
sure,
your system look like? How is it built?
sure. Well, it's a very interesting solution under the hood, and we've spent a lot of time, huge amount of manpower on them to build it. And on the encoder side of the thing, on the cooperation side of the thing, right now we are just using the software based encoders,
Mhm.
and it's libx264, basically some
Mhm.
a thing that everybody is using. The reason
Sure.
for that is that it provides us with us and everyone else with so many options and so
Mhm.
much freedom that you could choose and basically fine tune your encoder process
Mhm.
to get two out of those three uh,
That's right.
aspects of the bitrate quality and the resources. So
And for you, H.264 also covers literally every device that you would want
yes,
someone to be able to receive your content on. So that makes
that is
sense.
correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
And yes, we are tuning it, highly tuning it. I mean, the term content aware encoding is very, very
Yeah.
familiar to everybody. And we have to do sort of the same thing, but in the live thing, live video
Mm.
streaming, and per our games. So each and
Mhm.
every one of our encoders are tuned to the specific game that they are
Mhm.
working on to compress. So to
So
say, you know,
explain that.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Explain that. I know we're not now. We're starting to talk about encoding, but hey, we're both encoding geeks here. So
Sure. Well, the thing is that it's where
how is
everything
it? I guess what I'm
starts.
curious is how are the games different? Like just in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why would one game be different from another? You have a what do you call them again? It's not a dealer, right? Or do you
It's
actually
game
call them
presenters.
game presenter? Yeah,
Yes.
but it's like a dealer, like in a
Yes.
casino, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you have a game presenter, you have a table of some sort, you have a backdrop. Like, how is it different?
Well,
How are they?
that's the thing. I mean, for the traditional casino games, that is true. I mean,
Okay,
almost all of them look the same. I mean, very static. Not much is
yeah,
changing.
because
But
it's a studio, right? You just
correct.
have a lot of sets and
Correct. Yeah.
cameras and lights and everything.
More
Yeah,
than thousands of them, actually.
amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
and
Wow.
the thing is that yet for the traditional games, that is absolutely correct. But the other thing that we are doing is that try to create entertainment. I mean, it's not just the
Mm,
casino thing. I mean, we have newer generation games, VR games. I mean, mixed
mm,
reality. I mean,
okay.
the virtual and real studio stuff like that.
Mm,
And those are very, very complex games. I mean,
mm,
mixing the traditional casino games and with the
mhm,
modern technology,
mhm,
and they are very, very entertaining as well, but very highly challenging when it comes to the encoding, to distribution, to playback, because
mhm,
of the variety of scenes and complexities in the single game, and amount of time that we don't have to encode them
mhm.
and push them to our CDN and network, and eventually to our players' devices. So
Understand.
yeah, that makes it very, very complicated and requires lot of time and expertise to spend on them, to tune them, so you can find a good balance where you
Yeah.
don't spend too much time, so you're not increasing the latency.
Yeah.
And while we are trying to keep the bitrate graphs basically
Yeah.
as smooth as possible, because jumps and in the
Hmm.
bitrates will, at the end of the day, create bad experience for the users in terms of quality, in terms of possibility in playback stalls.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a big challenge for us on that
Yeah.
side of the thing.
So I took you on a little bit of a detour.
Oh, sure.
You were explaining about the content aware, content adaptive approach. What else can you tell us about how you're approaching that? And you're using X264. Assume that your CRF is a part of the picture. Is it? Is it not? Is that a part of your optimization scheme?
Well,
Yeah, tell us.
CRF is and isn't a part of the
Mhm.
scheme. In some cases, we are using the CRF, but in some other cases, we cannot use the CRF.
You can't. That's
No,
right.
no,
Yeah.
because of the exact thing that, I mean, CRF is very, very smart
Yeah.
to create an output that basically has dedicated enough bits to it,
Yeah.
not more than it needs, not less than it needs, the exact
Yes.
amount it needs. But again, that may cause, in case of some of our games, which has a very, very static scene and suddenly changes to a highly complex, lots of motion and small details,
Mm-hmm.
that would create a huge jump and spike in the bit rates.
Mm-hmm.
That is not good. This is
Yeah.
again the part that we have to sacrifice the quality. Of course, we know that
Yeah.
the CRF will capped CRF, so to say,
Sure.
creates the best quality, but it also sometimes may be a slower than you just
Yeah.
set the bit rates.
Got it.
And one aspect of the encoding in low latency is that you have to let go of look aheads, almost all of the look ahead. And the
Mm-hmm.
look ahead, just to give a brief explanation, is the way that for the encoder to look ahead of what's happening right now, and
Yeah.
being able to use that information in current encoding
Mm-hmm.
process, so to be prepared for what's come next and
Mm-hmm.
optimize the encoding based on that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have the luxury of lookaheads, then it hurts the quality and the bitrate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, we have to not use them or use very limited number of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that we are dealing with in our encoding part of the chain. And after that, we are getting to the distribution side. After we generated the video compressed, and just before going to that, I should tell you that there are sometimes latencies coming from places that you don't expect. We do
Mm-hmm.
see sometimes huge amount of latencies coming just from the cameras and all the
Interesting.
equipments that are delivering raw feed
Sure.
from studios
Sure.
to our encoders.
Maybe it's helpful just give a really quick overview because a lot of our audience is probably used to getting a mezzanine file. That's the input.
Mhm.
It's a mezzanine file, and they may not be completely aware of all of the physical devices that are in the chain. So when we
True.
talk glass to glass latency, I run into this a lot. I spend most of my time, as I think a lot of the audience knows, in the video encoding side. And so people will want to know about what's the latency of the encoder. And, my standard response is it's irrelevant because it is so tiny in the whole glass to glass, that's the wrong question.
True.
Often. I mean, obviously, yes,
True.
there's some specifics. So I'm grossly oversimplifying. But share with us what that workflow looks like, like even just what the production workflow looks like. I think that would be interesting.
Sure. I mean, all of our, again, glass to glass
Yeah.
latency is the keyword here. All of our workflow has been there designed and implemented in a way to minimize that latency latency And
Mm-hmm.
the way that we are working is that we have cameras in the studios, and the studios, they are connected via the SDI cables to the switches, and
SDI.
then
Okay.
goes directly to the encoders. Our encoders are sitting technically next to the studios in a server room in each and every one of our studios. And the
Sure.
reason for that is that we want to receive raw, uncompressed. We just want to compress video once, not more than once.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the part that I received the question a lot around. I mean, people are asking me, why are you not using cloud-based encoding encoder? And the one of the simple answers to that is that for 1,000 studios, each one of them require 4 or 5 qualities. I mean, the cost, I mean, it's just going to be too huge for us to
Mm.
uh, host all of our encoders on the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But we
And are
are,
you running on Intel machines, AMD, a mix?
well,
What?
right now we are using Intel, but we are
Mhm.
experimenting with AMDs as well.
When you have 64 physical cores, you can do a lot.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I mean,
So
just seeing the number of cores them are very, very interesting. But you have to think about this part of the equation as well, is that many of the things in the video encoding part of the whole chain is inside the encoder are sequential things. I mean,
yeah.
not having like, there might not be that much benefit between 64 cores or 6400 cores. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how much power each one of those core is offering, and some features that these CPUs are providing, like the AVX, AVX2, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
more, of course, on the Intel side of the thing, and
Mm-hmm.
there may be more important than the number of cores themselves. But nevertheless, yes, you're right. We are experimenting with the AMD. I
Mm.
must say that, and
Interesting.
it is very interesting. We should have the results soon, and then
Mm-hmm.
decide what will be our course of action for
Yeah.
future games. Yes.
But let me just make sure I heard you correctly. So what I did not hear you say about the cloud, and maybe I cut you off, you didn't finish your thought. You said cost was the issue. You did not say latency. So
Well,
did I hear you correctly, or is there still a latency consideration?
well, yes. Cost is one thing, but of course you can't deliver to cloud very fast using some, I mean, pairing some very, very good
Mm-hmm.
dedicated network lines, and
Mm-hmm.
very, very light encoding in the studios, of
Mm-hmm.
course. But to be honest, nothing is free. Cost money wise is
Exactly.
one of them, but
Yeah.
the other thing is time. If we want to send it to the cloud, we have to encode, because we are receiving the
Yeah.
raw input. We have to encode it once and then send it to the
Mm-hmm.
cloud and transcode it
Mm-hmm.
there.
And then transcode. Yeah.
Yeah, so it will definitely add to the time. And to
Mm.
be honest with you, if you are aiming for the lowest latency possible, then the encoder latency becomes non-negligible unless you do some tweaks into it. I mean, go deep into the code, and not everybody is willing
Mm-hmm.
to do that and invest that
Mm-hmm.
much in that part of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, yes, cost and latency after that are the two factors. And I said our whole infrastructure and our whole solution is based on getting lowest latency possible
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So what we are doing, we are encoding and on-prem, and then push those qualities outside of our encoders into the cloud. After that, it
Mm-hmm.
goes into the cloud and just get distributed around the world,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's that part and the encoder part. And then we get to the distribution side of the thing. And I must say that, especially if you're operating live in and around Europe and North America, the distribution latency wouldn't be that much of a burden with current solutions, which are mainly rely on the RTMP to move
Mm-hmm.
the stream around. And as soon as your trying to reach the places uh, away from these two, the Europe and North
Hmm.
America, like the East Asia,
Hmm.
then you are getting into problems. The
Hmm.
latency becomes an issue, especially with the RTMP. And
Hmm.
this is one of the areas that we are currently working on, trying to
Hmm.
find the solution around. And
Hmm.
there is a main reason for that. Looks like that there is a big gap between the almost on all of the networks between the hubs in Europe and Asia. There's
Hmm.
a huge gap in there. And when you are using something like the RTMP, because it's built on top of the TCP, then it you will get to the problem with the TCP with the head of line blocking, that it sends the packets, waits for the acknowledgement from the receiver, and then continues to send if it receives the acknowledgement. If the hop is just too big, I mean, the step is too big, then the
Yeah,
time to receive those acknowledgements increases, and that basically creates a lot of problem. And
understand.
yeah, so that is another part that we are trying to deal with. But right now, we are doing the RTMP in that part. And then we get to the most troublesome part, which is the last mile. As soon as we
Mm-hmm.
deliver our video to our edge servers, edge points, and as soon as we are trying to deliver it to the users, that
Hmm.
is there is a huge range of conditions there in the
Hmm.
front end side of the thing. People are on different networks, on different devices. I mean, if they are on the mobile networks, and we see that the major, even for us, the majority of our users are on the mobile devices.
Mobile. Yeah.
Yes, and the mobile connections are much more variable than the home connections or I
Hmm.
mean the LAN connections.
Hmm.
So this is an area that is highly interesting, and that is the part where the HLS and the WebRTC and all come into the play, and that is that everyone trying to solve right now, and we
Interesting.
did it our way basically.
Yeah, yeah, understand. By the way, how big is your engineering team? How many folks do you have working on solving these problems?
Well, when we are talking about the engineering team, I mean, it's different. If for the video engineering itself, it's around 35 of us
Hmm.
from the QAs, engineers, and but when we are talking about the engineering, again, in the evolution, there is more than three, 400 of us. I mean,
Mm.
they are
Mm.
creating the games. I mean, the network
Yeah,
people and all of the
yeah.
security side of the thing, because security is a huge thing for us. I mean,
Oh, it has to be.
yep, it is. And
There's some bad actors out there who would love to attack and
true. And
yeah,
they are doing it basically 24/7. And
24/7. Yeah,
yes, yes. And,
exactly. Yeah.
and making sure the integrity of the games is
Sure,
intact,
sure,
it's
because
a big task.
that's your whole business.
Correct.
If they lose confidence, then yeah, that's
True, true.
well. This is really interesting. Thank you for sharing the insights. You know what are yeah, there must be a few, more than one or two, but let's just keep it to a few. What are some of the lessons learned from looking over the years, and maybe even some decisions where you say, wow, we really, we did the right thing, and then if I had to redo it again, I might choose a different technology approach, whatever. I think that's
Well,
always interesting to hear.
sure. The thing is that what we learned over the years, that we had have to. I mean, we should have more confidence in ourselves.
Mm.
And one thing is that if you want to do something that is very radically different from the standard use cases out there,
Hmm.
something that fits your own business only and no one
Hmm.
else's, you have to do
Hmm.
it yourself. And
Yeah.
what we came to regret was that we had to rely on the third party tools. Not that they were bad or anything,
Hmm.
but we kind of had to bend to their the way that those tools were working and
Mm.
those
Mm.
technologies, rather than trying to address what our business and our company needs.
Hmm.
So we came to the conclusion that for many parts of our solution. Instead of using third-party tools and vendor-provided tools, we have had to, I mean, we should have done it ourselves.
Mm.
And actually, we are starting to do that right now.
Mm.
Using open source stuff is not always free, and you have to define
Exactly.
what's free and what's not. And you
Yeah.
you are getting something open source. It looks like that you are just basically cloning their Git repository and
Mm-hmm.
start using it.
Mm-hmm.
But usually it's not that easy. You have to modify it, you have to maintain it and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it ends up being more expensive in terms of the money paid for the people
Yes.
that you have to hire to
Yes.
maintain
Yes.
and customize these tools and technologies for you. But when it comes with the vendor provided solutions, usually, I mean, for the vendors, it makes most sense if they are basically make something that can address the need of the large number of other
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and they are trying to create something that is usable for biggest audience possible.
Yeah, that's right.
So they are, and that's a good thing. I mean, having a standard there, it's absolutely a good thing. I'm not saying
Sure.
it's a bad thing,
Sure.
but the thing is that if your business like ours is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily uses or fits those use
Mm.
cases that
Mm.
those standards are trying to address,
Mm.
then you're going to be in trouble.
Mm.
For example, I give you an instance of it. WebRTC, it is an amazing piece of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen in case of the places like the cloud gaming,
Mm-hmm.
it is just magnificent when the way that it works. Although at the expense of the, for example, like you have to spend 20 to 30, 40 megabits per second to get a decent HD quality. And but again, you're pressing a button and the
And yeah,
character
and
just
there it is.
moves. It
Yeah,
feels
exactly.
like as if there is no latency at all.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
there is something there.
Yeah.
But the problem with the WebRTC in our case is that, yes, we love to have this amount of latencies minimum, but we have studios that we spend a lot of money to build them, and the games that we spend a lot of money to build them, and we want them to look good. And
Mm-hmm.
if we want
Mm-hmm.
them to look good on the WebRTC, we have to go for 30, 40 megabits per second. One of the reasons being that in the WebRTC, you have to use, when you're using the H.264, you
Yeah.
have to use the baseline, basically,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
baseline profile.
And
Oh,
you're talking about 1080p resolution?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, 1080 at 25 frame per second.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
although I've seen it posting on Twitter that somebody tested the high profile on the WebRTC, but I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
what was it. But the risk is there that if you're doing some magic there, I mean, with the packets and headers and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes troublesome when you're trying to get a playback on the generic browsers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a risk lying there. So for us, in order to be able to make something that looks better than the
Mm-hmm.
WebRTC streams,
Mm-hmm.
but is much faster than the HLS and LL Dash and those stuff, regular Dash, sorry, then we had to create our own. For example, we are doing the RTMP over WebSocket, and in our recently we are using fragmented MP4 over WebSocket.
Mm-hmm.
So we are
Mm-hmm.
opening a WebSocket and pushing the streams directly to the users. Well, that comes at the cost, of course, but it was
Sure.
all about the cost. We
Yeah.
have to have
Yeah.
larger servers, edge servers, in order to be able to scale it.
And you also have to have a custom player. I mean, you have to
Correct.
have your player, but you've always had a player. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay.
Well, the thing is that our video is tied to what's happening to the games. And
Correct.
it's not
Correct.
just a video. There is huge
Yeah,
amount
that's
of
right.
data that is
That's right.
rendered in the
That's
front
right.
end, creates a game,
Yeah.
and they have to be synced together, whatever happens in
Mm-hmm.
the game UI and the video itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yes, in nutshell, yes, we have a player, custom
You
player.
You must have a big player development team.
Oh yes.
Eh, Yeah, okay. Okay. So out of those 300 or even 400 engineers, how many are working on the player?
Well,
Must be a pretty big number.
well, the thing is that not that big. We are lucky to have very, very talented people in our team.
Sure,
And
sure.
video itself is have like 35 of those people
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
video team. And what's happening there is that like we have like five, six of them on the front end, and
Mm,
a few of them are working as the developer, core developers on them.
mhm.
And we we are using technically we are using the open source stuff but modifying them heavily, and in some cases we had to develop our own completely from ground up
Mhm,
player as well.
mhm,
But in case like for example the iPhones, which are
mhm.
very, very restricted in terms of what you can play on them, get the
Yeah,
playback on them, what we've done, we are still using the HLS there, and
mhm.
that's
Got it.
that's not a optimal solution right now, but we are looking for
Oh, that's
alternatives.
interesting. So for iOS, which of course it makes sense, you have to use HLS, but on Android or some other connected devices, you're
Yep,
able to use your custom approach with the website, opening up the WebSocket.
correct.
I remember you telling me about that. When we chatted, I don't know, a number of months ago, and I thought, wow, what an ingenious approach for your application. Now, again, there's other
Mhm.
people that would say, hey, that's cool, but it wouldn't work for us. you know,
Correct. Yes.
so,
Yes.
and I
Well,
think Benham, this is even as we're closing here on this discussion, I think this is actually a really important point, and I want to make it. And feel free to respond and amplify if you agree. Is it so much of video? We hear both from vendors and even our own peers working in engineering, and sometimes you hear things as if they're facts, but they're facts without context. And so much of video, the context is everything. So whether it's selecting a technology, selecting a codec, selecting I mean, just so many things. It really has to come back to the answer. If someone says, well, what should I use? First of all, it depends, which everybody hates. But instead of saying it depends, it's like, well, what's the context? Because even this discussion here, we've talked about HLS and low latency HLS and how certain devices that's required, and then WebRTC, and here you're needing to span all of those. It'd be a beautiful thing if you didn't have to, because it'd make your life easier. But that's the reality of the world that we're in. And I think that's
correct.
just an important point to
Correct.
make.
Correct. Well, there is this very famous thing that said everybody says that content is the king, and
Yes.
actually the content is the thing that basically set the context for us. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
if you're delivering, so to say, the video, the blockbuster uh, movie on a
Mhm.
platform, then latency is irrelevant. I mean, it's
That's right.
something else. I
Yeah.
mean, whatever happened in that movie happened probably last year when they were filming
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. Yeah.
but when
Yeah.
you're delivering something like the I don't know, when you're talking with somebody over a web
Sure.
conference,
Sure.
like doing an
Sure.
interview, or
Exactly like what we're
then
doing right here.
exactly
Yeah.
then that you're absolutely correct. The context is everything, and there's never a straightforward, easy answer to that. Like
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
solution should I use? It depends on the
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I am really appreciative, and I know the listeners are too, with the nuggets that you've shared. And we'll definitely have to do this again and continue the conversation. A,
Absolutely.
a, a lot more that we could talk about. Real quick, what are you excited about? And I'm asking open-ended question from you can answer from a technology perspective or just a trend in the market or anything.
Oh
What are you
yes.
excited about right now?
Well, so many stuff right now, and I'm excited about so many things that we are working right now, which, to be honest with you, I cannot disclose at this point in time. Hopefully, in future I can.
Just a little inkling, just a
Well,
little
yes,
tiny.
the big keyword would be to drop the RTMP. Lovely RTMP. I have
Mm,
nothing against it,
sure.
but I love it. But I mean,
Yeah.
and letting go of it will. opens
Yes.
so many doors from the
Interesting.
multiple codecs, multiple features,
Yeah.
multiple tracks, and stuff like that. I mean, it's a different thing. And being
Mm.
able to serve long distances, high quality, higher than HD, and
Hmm.
then in lowest latency latency possible.
Amazing.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, with the advent of UDP-based codecs, I mean, I'm looking forward to them. Things like the Quick, things like
Hmm.
the web transport. I mean,
Hmm.
recently there is this basically work group that are working on the Quick on media over Quick, and
Hmm.
not just using Quick on to delivering to the clients, but why not using it on the backend side of the things.
That's
These are
right.
the things that get me really, really excited. And of course, I mean, the newer generation codecs, I mean,
Mm.
it is absolutely the time for them. I mean, we have trouble, and we have VR games which are delivering 4K. And to be honest with you, we need that next
Yeah.
thing to make it
Yeah,
get
because if
better.
you're needing, for traditional WebRTC anyway, to get the quality, and you need 20 or 30 megabits just for 1080p H.264, like, wow, that just doesn't scale.
True, true,
So, and then if you want to push the resolution, yeah, you need AV1 and,
true,
or to certain devices, HEVC and
true.
or VVC and the other
Yeah,
codecs. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's great. Well, super interesting. You mentioned Quick. I just made a mental note. Maybe that's something we'll talk about later in our next interview, but I'm going to get someone on to talk about Quick because I actually am very excited as well. And, when Google introduced Stadia a few years ago, and of course, they had a whole technical presentation, and Quick is, it's very interesting what they're doing to even control, measure the speed of the network and use that as an input for the QP of the encoder. Like, that is tight integration at the
That's next
frame
level.
level. Like,
Yeah,
that is next level.
yeah.
And I'm actually not a big game person. I mean, I enjoy games, but I choose to spend my time doing other things. But I've had a Stadia membership from the very beginning, barely play it, but when I do turn it on, I have the same experience you have. Even though I understand consoles are more responsive, and I totally get it. And if I was a hardcore gamer, I would probably have the reaction that a lot of the hardcore gamers have to Stadia. But I am just amazed, being a technologist, at how well it works. It is mind boggling to think that all of the compute is happening in the cloud. And here I am with just a lightweight input device, and I've got very high quality image. It blows me away. So
True,
I
true, true. That just a very quick note. I had some experience around the encoding for the cloud gaming, and I've
mm,
seen that what you're saying, that yes, using those information from the client side to adjust your
yep,
encoder, because you cannot use the traditional way of adaptive bitrate. You
exactly.
cannot
Yeah,
create multiple streams,
exactly. Yeah.
and it is going to be very, very interesting. So
Yeah, yeah. And with the
cool.
metaverse, which regardless of what that's ultimately going to look like, at the end of the day, whether it's avatars or rendered, other rendered beings or whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, low latency, you're going to have two-way communication. Eventually, I think the avatars will become very much real life, whether
True.
it's literally me or just somebody I create, I don't know, but it's exciting. Well, Behnam, thank you so much for coming on Inside the Videoverse. And you are one of my first interviews for this new show. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll definitely have you on again, and really look forward to tracking what you guys are doing. I know Evolution Gaming is really at the forefront of high scale, extremely low latency, high quality. You've built a big business, and it's exciting. So,
It
thank
is.
you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.